Isn't it amazing how we tend to focus on things like the election or things like the border or things like, the Russia-Ukraine situation, the Israel situation? And all those are very important, and we talk about those all the time. But truthfully, what really impacts you the most? It's your personal finances. When you can't afford the credit card bill, when you can't afford the car note, when all of a sudden food costs crazily at the grocery store, but also just the fast food burger that's really not good for you and you still have to buy it because it's convenience. That's what really affects you is our budget, is how we can't even afford to live as Americans now. We're in debt up to our eyeballs as a nation. Now, we're not just talking about nation debt and national debt. We're talking about the fact that we've lost independence personally because we have no money. We can't pay our bills. Today, we're going to discuss that. While our focus tends to be on everything else, we may need to refocus back on what's important. And that's our family, our household. The fact that if we would just pay our bills and be able to maybe get on a budget, we may not be in the problems that we're in right now. And we may not have the stress for sure that we do right now. Let's talk about that today. Let's jump into it. Today's video starts right now.
How come the stars come to shine when it's dark from so far away? Show us where we
are. Welcome to the Max. Thank you so very much for being here today. If you are new to the channel, go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell, thumbs up. Please, if you like the content, give us a thumbs up because that helps YouTube know that this video is very important and we love to share it. That helps us share it across this platform. So if you like it, thumbs up, that'd be great. Now, excuse the camera angle. We had one camera go down, so we're on another camera, and it doesn't have a good stand, so I hope the video quality is good today. But now let's jump into the subject of today. Now, the border is important. The election's important. We talk about these kind of things all the time. The wars and the funding, all that matters. The national debt, all that matters. But what we tend to take our focus off of is our own personal household. Do you know that mostly what elections are won and lost on? It's not wars. It's not even the border. It's really economics. Economics always plays into it because that's the personal part of us. That's the part that we think that the government can help us at, which they really can't. Now, they can cause a lot of problems for us, but ultimately, we kind of are the blame for the problems sometimes because we tend to set ourselves up for failure. Now, before you get mad, let's talk a little bit about it. We have record credit card debt. Now, the government did not put you in that credit card debt. Maybe your wants, your needs, and maybe some very important things did. We're in record student loan debt. Did you have to go to college, and are you using that degree, and did you need to go to that college? We're in record automobile debt. We're upside down in automobiles. Did you have to buy the new car? Our mortgages are falling to pieces. They're higher than they've ever been, and we're buying more homes that we can't afford. We've jumped into payday loans and phantom loans where it's buy now, pay later, and those interests sometimes are 20, 40, and 60%. Just crazy. You'll never pay them off. Now, the government can make the environment for bad times to make us have inflation and interest higher. But what really affects people being broke, it may be the fact that we just need to be a little bit smarter in what we're doing when it comes to our own personal finances. Now, before you get mad, let's dive a little deeper. And let's help what we can help. That's all we can do. When we talk about all these things, we always hear people say, I don't know if we can do anything about that. And some things you're right, we can't do anything about, but these things we can. You add on your hand how many times you're eating out per week. Now, I know people say, well, it's for convenience, I'm working. Think about this. If you said, I'm gonna add up all the money that I spend on lunch, coffee, and convenience snacks and food a week, it would probably blow your mind. Now I have a lot of people say, oh no, I don't do all that. I bring my lunch, I save money, I drink coffee that I make at home, and that's great. You're already making those first steps. But for majority of Americans, I see the fast food lines, I see the lunch lines, I see the lines at Starbucks. And if you can afford those, great. However, you're buying subpar food and paying top dollar for them, and you're realizing it's bad for your health, it's actually not good for your budget, and you really don't have the money to pay for it. And pretty much the food is such trash that it's actually costing your health a little bit. And so we don't realize those things, but we do it in convenience. When me and Misty first got married, we were flat broke. I'm talking, we were both in school trying to make it. And we realized that if we wanted to clean up our diet, but not only clean up our diet, we had to save money. Instead of going out to eat we made it fun. So we started making food at home. And here's the thing. The part of the meal that was so important when we really wanted to go out was dessert. My wife loves sweets. She is addicted to sweets. She loves them. So we realized, why don't we do this? Why don't we sub the meal out that was costing $50 and not the $5 or $10 dessert? So we learned to do this. We learned to cook at home, and then it became a special occasion to go to town and buy the dessert that she loves so much. So instead of paying $50 plus a dessert, we learned to just cook at home, and it cost us like a few bucks, and then we'd buy the dessert. So we didn't take away from the specialness of the whole meal because the dessert was still there. So you have to be creative. You have to figure out what's the best way. Now, I'm not saying you have to eat tuna and PB&Js each and every day. That might be a good move for you, especially if you're trying to save money. But be creative. Learn to cook, eat with your family at home, learn to make enough to where you can eat it the next day. If you do that for 1 year, if you just eat leftovers for 1 year, think of how much money you would save and how much that would impact your budget, or you can start getting out of debt. Let's be honest. Most of you were probably purchasing all that food with credit cards. And we're like, oh, we'll pay it off. We tend to say with credit cards, well, I mean, we've earned this. We've earned this week's splurge. We've earned this job. We've earned this clothes. We've earned this vacation. And we don't have the money to actually pay for it. So the earning is you've worked 40 to 50 hours to kill yourself this week to provide. And actually, because you're buying something with debt, you're making yourself more of a slave to the lender, and you're making yourself more to where you have to work more hours to pay for the thing that you quote unquote earned and you deserved. We have to get out of that mentality to say, you know what? Well, we've bit off more than we can chew. And so instead of saying this is what we've earned, we may say what we really need to do is reset that whole mentality. Normalcy is not normal anymore in America. We have to get out of debt. Our whole system is based on debt. So why don't we try to focus on what we've earned is just a night at home, watching a movie. We have movie nights here all the time, and we've learned to not just go eat pizza and buy pizza. We've learned to not just go buy popcorn. We've learned to make popcorn, learn to make pizza, and splurge on a movie that we've been wanting to see, an old nostalgic movie that the kids have been wanting to see. That becomes a fun ritual for us. So we get creative on saving money. We get creative with our food. We get creative on the fact that we're not going to spend a lot on credit cards, because ultimately what we deserved is time with our family, time that we can enjoy relaxing. It's not the fact of what we deserved is paying for a vacation we can't afford or buying food and then not having to cook it, but ultimately that's making us more in debt because we couldn't afford it in the first place. We have to get out of the fact of what normal is in America is spending money that we don't have. Get creative when it comes to this and cut your credit cards up and start remembering, don't live off plastic. Know that you can do something else other than just eating in town. All that plays into being more independent. I have a buddy that bought a vehicle yesterday and are actually finishing it up today. And I made a comment to him. I said, do you really think you need that new vehicle? And he's like, well, mine's got like 177,000 miles. It's paid for. It started to mess up a little bit. Do you hear how we as Americans justify the new spending? Well, remember, vehicles are higher than they've ever been. We're in debt up to our eyeballs when it comes to vehicles. People are taking out 10-year notes on vehicles. What? That blows my mind. My first house, my and Misty's first house. Now, we're young. I say we're young. We're only in our mid-30s. Our first house was like $50,000, and we thought that was unbelievable. But there's people buying cars that sit in a driveway to get rained on and dirt on and held on for $80,000 to $100,000. Do you actually think they can afford it when the average American that's 50 to 60% can't afford a $2,000 fix on emergency fund without using a credit card? Do you think they actually need to buy that vehicle? My local dealerships, I know a lot of them. I know a lot of the owners there, and they'll tell you, and I think it's crazy, but they'll tell you there's 5 dealerships in this little small town that I live in, and of those 5 dealerships, most of them sell 50 to 100 cars a month. Now, I know our economy has to run, and I know they have to make money, and I know the salesmen have to make money, but do you actually think all those 50 to 100 people at every dealership and thousands of people that buy cars a month, do you actually think they can afford the money that they're spending on the car just to say they have a new car and they wanted it? They try to justify it in some way. So we have to think past that mentality of saying we have to have a new car because our other one is too old, or it doesn't look as good, or it has some dents on it and scrapes on it, and I have to send it to the mechanic's place a few times a year. We have to realize that that's still better off than having a note for $800 to $1,000 to $1,200 a month for 10 years. That interest that you're paying, the fact that that vehicle is going to depreciate, that is not a way to actually be sustainable and independent, is to buy this new car. You don't need it. So we have to realize we may have more car than we need. The reason I bring these up is because guess what? We're in more debt, buy now, pay later. We're in more debt, credit cards. We're in more debt with auto loans. All these things are showing what Americans are going through. And the economy is the most important. A lot of these things we're causing on our own self because we're choosing to do these things and try to justify our spending when really we're broke and we can't afford it. And I know people say, oh, well, I understand that now, but I'm in debt up to my eyeballs. What do I do? You have to get on a budget. You have to realize that, if we want to be slaves to the lenders, and this is exactly what big government wants. They want a socialist mentality. So the more that you're dependent on them helping you, the more that you're dependent on needing student loan relief, the more you're dependent on needing a stimulus, the more you're dependent because you can't afford your own gas and you can't afford your own automobile, your own home, your rent, the more you depend on the government to provide it. So the more you're slave to the lender, the more that we're in debt, the more that we're broke, the more we will lean on the government to give us the handouts, to help us. So we have to structure our life better. So change it. You can change it right now. Now, if you can't get a second job and you're retired, then I know you're on fixed incomes and it's hard. But I promise you, if you really got down to it and you started writing your debts down, you started writing your monthly notes down, you started writing what it cost you to live down, you could find ways to save money. It may be tightening your weekly shopping list. It may be tightening your food list to try to not eat steaks all the time. It may be hamburger steaks. Or it may be eating this versus that to save a little extra money. Like we talked about, not eating in town, not living on plastic credit cards, not having the Amazon out because we're too enticed to just go buy something on Amazon because we think we deserve it. We have to learn to change that because you know what? I want to impact my children different. The only way I can truly impact them is to start teaching them responsibility, teaching them good stewardship, teaching them sustainability and independence, and depending on their self and on someone to provide it for them. You know why we've built a mentality where people support the Democratic platform or the fact that government's growing and they need help from them? It's because we've built a life that's been unsustainable for so long. So why don't we change that? Why don't we change the way that we're doing life? Don't look to government to fix the problem. Don't just focus on the border wall. Don't just focus on the wars. Why don't we focus on our home? Most marriages end with financial problems. That's why they divorce. That's why most marriages end in divorce. It really starts off with financial problems. Most people can't pass down funds or assets to their children because they lived too big or not able to pass down that awesome thing to their children. So I challenge you, let's change our family trees. Let's quit blaming everybody else for the financial problems that we're having because it may be just us. And I know that's hard to swallow. That's a hard pill I had to swallow for a long time. But when I started getting on a budget and start tightening my budget and start realizing I don't need the store-bought coffee, I don't need the food in town for convenience, I don't need to take this trip just because I feel like I deserve it. When I started realizing that, that's when I started realizing that I may have been my only problem. So if you want to be a better prepper, you want to be a better homesteader, you want to be a better father, mother, husband, wife, it may come down to you tightening your budget, you changing the way you're doing it, because people are broke and they tend to want to blame everyone else for their brokenness. And all the while, it may be mistakes we've made. Now that's hard to swallow because I've been there. Let's try to clean it up. When we start cleaning this up, we get better marriages. We get better diets because we're eating at home. We get better financial benefits so we can then take the trip that we want to take. We get better independence because we're not tied to a car or tied to a home that we can't afford. It changes your whole life. So when we talk about the economy being bad or needing to be fixed, it starts with us. We start fixing our home, we start fixing everything. And again, we can't fix everything until we realize fixing ourselves is important. When we start fixing our home, we start fixing our communities, we start fixing our counties, we start fixing our cities, we start fixing our states, then we can fix our nation. We cannot look for 6 months from now, an election's going to solve everything. Because Trump or Biden or whomever wins is not going to solve everything. Congress is not going to solve everything. It comes back down to our homes. If we want to fix something, it may start with us. So that's my video for the day. Hopefully it didn't step on your toes too much. But when we realize that we may be the problem of our own economies, we may have the answers that we need. It's just a hard pill to swallow. Then if we want to prep and we want to buy supplies and we want to have the things that we need to be more sustainable, it may take us first getting on a budget, tighten it down, getting our debts off of us, and being smarter, because it's going to help us overall with our marriage, our children, and ultimately with our life. Guys, let me know what you think about this content of this video. It's a little bit different video than I typically do, but I think that if we want to fix what we've got going on, it does start in our home. And people are broken. They need help. Well, let's try to be good stewards with what God's given us, a brain. Let's be wise, and let's start getting back on a common sense approach to heal our families first, our finances first, and then through that, we'll have better freedom. Guys, let me know what you think. God bless. Happy holidays.